Hey y'all, it's Amanda and this is my Texas Zone 8 garden. And even though it's almost 7 o'clock at night, it's still like 102 degrees outside, but we're in the backyard and I'm gonna give you a tour of the backyard garden. Okay, so we're just starting in the backyard garden. I already did a tour of the front and side garden, and I'll go ahead and put a link of that below just so you can see what it looks like in August. I definitely think that this is the best my gardens have ever looked at this time of the year. This is the worst, absolute worst time of the year in North Texas. The heat is just nearly unbearable. It's hard to get outside, but things are looking pretty good and we have a lot of blooms being produced. Okay, so starting here in the raised beds are filling in nicely. Tons of beautiful zinnias popping up. I'm starting to get additional flushes of this rudbeckia coming through. Lots of self-seeded celosia, which is really nice. Let me have you come forward, Jeff. I do need to start cutting back a bunch of the rudbeckia. So that's one of the things I'm going to be doing this week, is doing some really harsh pruning to cut back some different things. But you can see some of the fresher blooms coming through, which has been nice. Definitely time to start cutting a lot of that stuff back, because these plants will start preparing themselves for fresh blooms for the fall. Lots of gorgeous zinnia coming up here, and I even started getting some of the Veronica that I started from seed last year. This is a perennial variety of Veronica that's been coming up, and this is the first time that I've had Veronica last all the way through the hardest parts of the year. And then in addition, I'm going to try to get a hold of this. It's prickly though. I've got my Zulu Warrior, has been blooming beautifully. It falls over very quickly and I have done a very poor job getting it to stand up. It is way too prickly. Way more prickly than I ever thought it would be. So I am actually planning on pulling these plants out this fall, just because it's not something that I feel like I can easily harvest and utilize for flower arrangements. I've also got a bunch of polar bear zinnias coming through, these beautiful white zinnias. Everything tomorrow morning is getting like a really big chop. I'm going to harvest quite a few, and then I'm going to cut back quite a few plants, and then really start hitting these with fertilizer probably the first week in September to really kind of get their growth going. Okay, so I do have a lot of plants that are starting to fall over. These are all of my straw flowers, and they've kind of been knocking over a lot of sunflowers that were now done. So I really need to get in here and harvest some of this stuff, get them a little bit shorter so that these have been harvested already before. That's why they're much shorter and they're producing another round. Now, all this ageratum, this is all this green, it has stopped blooming for the hottest part of the summer. I am really hoping that if I give it a nice hack back, that it will produce new blooms for the fall. I do have a few of my zinnias, not zinnias, my dahlias, my seed dahlias coming through. They've been okay. I'm not sure if I'm going to start those again next year, but they still are producing blooms. And of course you can see additional zinnias just tucked in throughout the entire garden, which is really, really nice. All right, so Jeff is showing y'all right now the gomphrena, raspberry cream gomphrena, that is putting on a lot of beautiful blooms. I really, once again, I need to get in and hack that back some do a lot of harvesting, so a lot of these blooms can start preparing themselves for fall blooms. And you can see that the ageratum is really taking over and leaning this direction into this bed, so I need to handle that. Now, I have a lot of beautiful blooms going on here, specifically this Queen Lime Blush Zinnia, which is absolutely gorgeous. All the zinnias are hopping right now. Anything zinnia, sunflowers, and celosia are going to be doing amazing at this point in time. I definitely am getting some of the powdery mildew on a lot of things. Not too awful, but enough that it's kind of starting to show up a little bit. You can see all of this needs to be harvested very soon. It's just been too hot to even get outside to do things like that, which is a problem because you want to keep your stuff harvested so it continues to produce blooms, which is important. Here's some of that self-seeded celosia that is just putting off a ton of growth. Absolutely beautiful. Definitely needs to be cut back so we can get some additional blooms going and even more zinnias kind of popping through. Okay, along the back wall, we've got a whole bunch of sunflowers coming up that I planted maybe 4 weeks ago. They're all starting to come up and come to fruition. The basil is just ridiculously beautiful. I'm really hoping a lot of this basil reseeds itself and that it restarts itself for next year. We are at the very end of the Goldstrum Rudbeckia right here. This is a perennial that's been here for a while. We're at the end of its particular season as well. And you can see over here the Don Juan Rose is going bonkers. I am not going to cut it back at this point in time. I might cut it back in just a very few places, but I am just giving it time to go ahead and work on forming new buds because we will get another flush of blooms for the fall. I also have a Fireworks Solidago that is trying to bloom. A little bit of it bloomed earlier, but then the rest of it is really starting to come on, and it should be really beautiful. It should just look like yellow fireworks on here, which should be absolutely stunning. This is its second or third year, I can't recall which one, but it is really filling in that space beautifully. I'm excited to be able to utilize that as a cut flower as well. Okay, so this is one of the new beds right here, and it's doing okay. It's just so hot, a lot of the plants, and we're filming at the very end of the day. These plants usually get watered earlier in the morning, so we're at the very end of the day, so it's not at its best. It could use a little bit of cutback, especially on some of these salvias. Just get them cleaned up so that we can get another flush of blooms for the fall. Now this right here is, I'm probably going to say it wrong, Cestrum, Citrus Cestrum, I think is what it is. And it should get nice and big in this space over time. It's done a lot better since I got it planted. I'd had it in a pot, nursery pot, since like last October. October or November, a while. And so it took me a while to get it planted, but it's looking really good. The idea is to train it upwards where it's more multi-branched, multi-trunk at the bottom with more of the floral and greenery up high. Still have some vincas going hard in here. I've got some sedum that's still looking really nice, but all in all, for just throwing these beds together midsummer, they're looking really good. Now behind me, I've still got some petunias hanging on in these hanging baskets. They don't look great, but they're hanging on. And then across the front, I did a little trimming up when I redid all of the water up front. We've got some beautiful, you okay? We've got some beautiful sweet potato vine going well. I've got some dahlias tucked back in there. I've got some St. John's fire. salvia. Everything's kind of still hanging on in this location. Okay, so right in front is my experiment that I've been doing with my gladiolas. I had been doing them in succession planting, had some success. A lot of them have started going dormant over here, and then you can see the younger ones are this direction and they haven't produced flowers yet, but they will. This week I'm actually moving this whole section of plants. It's going to be moving that direction directly on top of the mulch over there. And then what we're going to be doing is we're going to be covering the rest of this in cardboard sheet mulching and actual cedar mulch as well. And then I'm going to be placing two big urns are going to go over here. Those iron urns that I bought earlier in the year at that big sale, they're going to be coming right here as an entrance. That should be very cool. Now, up here are all of my birdhouse gourd and loofah vines, and they're putting on a lot of growth. And you can see, like, here's a birdhouse gourd right here, nice and heavy, looking really, really nicely. I've got a couple of birdhouse gourds over here. I've got a couple of loofahs tucked up into some places. This has ended up looking really, really nice. I'm very pleased with it. It's very whimsical and fun. And basically all I do with these vines right here is I just try to toss them up above if I can. It's really hard, and I'm not willing to get the ladders out, but I can also just tuck them back into other vines and allow them to get going back up in the right direction. So, but it's looking really nice as well, and I'm very pleased with how it is going. So over here's the other new bed that I started, and it's done okay as well. I'm worried that my alstroemeria that I had right here is gone. I don't know if it's just gone dormant, but it looks pretty dead. I'm hoping that it will come back next year and it's just gone dormant for this time of the year. Still have all the vincas rocking. A lot of this verbena right here is covered in spider mites, so it could be cut back. So many things can be cut back at this point in time. Now I will shift over here to one of the loofahs. This loofah is drying right here, and you can actually hear it. Let me see. Yeah, you can hear the seeds in it. This guy is drying, so I should be able to harvest this in the next week or two and actually have some of my loofah sponges, which is very cool. You can see additional loofahs tucked in here in different places too. I think that those are going to be really fun to harvest. And you got another one right back up in there as we continue to go throughout the season. But the loofah and the birdhouse gourds have been so much fun. I'm definitely going to be starting those again or growing those again in the future, just because they're so whimsical and happy. And once they're planted, I really haven't had to do anything with them. Okay, so this trellis right here is, oh man, it's a hot mess falling apart. I really needed, these are the trellis that I got from Temu, and I really need to go in and take them apart and then put them back together with glue to kind of do a better job supporting them all in place. I think that that would help quite a bit. Let me see if I can get this mostly back together for the time being. I think if I would, maybe at the end of the season, once everything's kind of died back, I'll come back out here and take these apart and then glue all the different pieces back together. They're not glued currently. They just kind of snap together. I think once I do that, that would help a lot. Now, we've still got a bunch of cocoa marigolds going, and once again, I need to continue to cut on these and encourage more growth to keep going. We're kind of getting too late in the season to start any more annuals from seed because most of them are going to need 60 to 90 days to achieve any kind of blooms. So kind of we're at the point where this is what it is on a lot of this. Now I still got this guy up front. This is an eggplant, still doing beautifully. This one doesn't have a bunch of eggplant on it right now, but the other ones on the other side of the garden have a ton. Now shifting this direction, we have a ton more zinnias in here. And once again, we really need to be harvesting them. This is a queen lime red, which is absolutely beautiful. I've got several of the candy stripe zinnias, which are really, really nice too. I've got a couple of celosia that have self-seeded themselves in here. And remember under here, we had a whole bunch of, I can't even see them anymore. This is my first year. It looks like they're still down here. A bunch of snapdragons were down here. And what I did is once the snapdragons stopped blooming, I went in and I planted all of these zinnias amongst them. And it's been really great. And they've shaded the snapdragons to help them make it through the summer. So what I'm really hoping is that once I'm done with all these zinnias and I pull them all out, that the snapdragons will have survived the summer down low. I can give them a little bit of a hack back and then they'll be fresh for the spring. Okay, so back over here is the heirloom chrysanthemum bed, and we did a massive cutback on these not too long ago. We do have some celosia, volunteer celosia coming up over here, and they have put on a lot of growth since I did their massive cutbacks. And so, I mean, they still probably have a good 60 days before we're going to start seeing blooms, but they are looking good, and I do need to start hitting them with some additional fertilizer. Over here we have the America Climbing Rose, and you can see the blooms have been drastically hit with the sun, so a lot of them are very sun bleached. This is the actual kind of fresher color, and then you can see what they look like as they age. But this needs a little bit of a prune back as well. This guy did really well considering he's been moved quite a few times in the last year. And he finally is in his final location, and we'll be training him up to grow over the entrance to the shade garden, but he's looking really good. Okay, and then right here I started, this bed used to have, I can't even remember what it had, oh, sunflowers in it, and before that it had ranunculus, and now I planted additional sunflowers and they are all coming up from seeds. Some of them are coming up, some of them aren't. Looks like we've got a good spattering, and these probably will come to fruition right at the end of the fall. So a bunch of these will probably be harvested mid-October to late October, which is great. That's a time of year where I still need blooms and I'm still working on floral arrangements. But I had gotten all these started and they're all looking really nice, and can't wait to see what happens with these. Okay, so the eggplants right here are doing amazing. This is Lostata Degandia eggplant, and I grew them from seed, and I'm obsessed with them. They've been so fun to grow. Done some cooking with them, could have probably done more. I harvest and I bring this stuff in and then I forget about it, but I probably got 9 on here that need to be harvested right now. Over here I've got bush acorn, bush acorn plants coming up right here. Don't currently see any squash bugs on them, but y'all know they're probably coming at some point in time. A couple of jalapeno plants still going. And then this is one of the tomato plants that I'd cut back, and actually a couple of them, and they're all coming back from the roots, which would be great. Maybe I'll get some tomatoes from them this fall. But this area is looking okay. I'm going to get Jeff to follow me into the shade garden. And right here, you're going to see some Perea as you're coming in that has gone crazy bonkers. This was that 3-tiered stand container that I had created, and everything else in it has pretty much died except for this Perea. So we do need to come back and do a massive cutback regarding that. But that that one is pretty ridiculous. Let me get Jeff to come on this side so he can get a good look at it. But that Perea is ridiculous. So I need to come in and do some work in the shade garden. We do have a lot of the clematis is putting off new greens at this point in time. Then I need to start training up here. It is time to cut back a lot of my hellebore old blooms just to get that cleaned up as well. We have some blooms to cut back on some of these heucheras that need to be cleaned up. This is another hellebore over here that we're just getting to the end of the season for the hellebore greens. This is about the time when they all start dying back. This right here is a oak leaf hydrangea. It's put on a lot of new growth this year, and eventually it should grow up and cover and shade this area, which would be great. It's another clematis that I started from root. That's growing there beautifully as well. Now I'll get Jeff to come this way and show him some of the stuff. So right here is a bear's britches. I think it's an acanthus, but I can't remember at this exact moment. It got eaten up pretty bad by grasshoppers, but we have a lot of new foliage coming back from the base, which that's really great. This guy right here, it's been so long since I've been in the garden. I can't remember what a lot of this is a leopard plant in the shade garden. Looking good. It's got some tattered leaves that need to be cleaned up. Over here in this tiered planter, I had a whole bunch of begonias that have succumbed to the heat. There's still some tucked in here, like this is one in here. And I'm kind of at the time where I need to come in here, clean up. This is all Swedish ivy. I need to clean up a bunch of the Swedish ivy. I need to locate the tubers from these begonias and see if they're still salvageable. And if they are, go ahead and dig them up and save them. And there's definitely some of them in here that are still trying to keep going, even despite all of this crazy Swedish ivy here. The Swedish ivy looks amazing. I think for next year with this, I think just adding just the Swedish ivy in here would be really great. I've also considered putting some bulbs in here that I've been researching, so I'll show you all what some of that looks like. Even over here, this Swedish ivy has gone bonkers over here and covered up some of the plants that I had back in here, including some really pretty astilbe, and I can't even recall what's back here, but it's all kind of gotten covered over by the Swedish ivy. So I do need to spend some time cutting some of that back. I think there was a bleeding heart which goes dormant, so it's already gone dormant for the year. Now over here I have a random volunteer celosia that made its way in this direction, and we have a bunch of hydrangeas that I had gotten from Mother's Day several years ago, and they are originally white, now they've faded to this green, and I will continue to allow them to dry. Well, I say that, but maybe it's time to go ahead and give them a little bit of a cutback so that we can have some new blooms for next year, because these particular varieties of hydrangeas bloom on old growth, on old wood. So it might be good for me to just go ahead, and I can enjoy them for the time being. I won't be able to use them as cut flowers this year, but I can go ahead and cut just above the first set of 2 leaves and cut just the head off, and then still have the old wood for next year. But yeah, this area is filling in really nicely. I don't think this guy, none of these leaves, yeah. Okay, so I do have one hydrangea back here that's pretty much dead except for a little bit of growth right here. So I will be replacing this container, I'm hoping with a maple leaf, a Japanese maple. That's what I'm really hoping to replace that with. Put a big container with a Japanese maple in here that will create more shade in this portion of the garden. Okay, right here is some Japanese anemone that I transplanted from the front garden, and it has been putting on some blooms, which is really fun, which is really good because it had been in the front garden a couple of years and had produced like next to no blooms. So that's awesome that it's happy in this location. Okay, so we're along the back strip, which is looking pretty good. We've got all our purple lantana, which I don't know why the mowers aren't mowing this portion. I don't know. I need to ask about that. The purple lantana is looking really good. And I do have some cantaloupe planted over here, which is really starting to put on some height. So I really need to begin training it up these trellis so that we'll hopefully have some cantaloupe by the end of October, which would be really great. You can see this is the time of the year when so many plants aren't doing well, but the lantana really puts on a ton of growth. And this is why I really plant this purple lantana, because it gives this opportunity for this really beautiful color when everything else looks kind of terrible. And this, once again, we've got more of the cantaloupe that is coming up right here, and hopefully a lot of that will start pollinating and growing up over the trellis. Now right here I've got an American Beauty berry that has not done really well. Basically it kind of split in the center. Hasn't done great. I think what I'm going to end up doing is this fall, I'm going to end up just kind of cutting it back to about 2 feet above the ground and allowing it to just refresh. And that probably means I'm going to sacrifice all of the berries that you can see coming up here. I'm probably going to end up sacrificing all of those for next year, but that's okay because it just really kind of is a hot mess and it really needed to be trimmed back so that it's kind of just falling over at this point. Now right here is a urban legend Oh So Easy rose, which has gone pretty bonkers crazy. It could use a really nice cutback as well. Now over this I do have additional loofahs. I think that's one is a loofah. And then over here, which I'm kind of obsessed with over here, I'll get Jeff to swing around. I've got lots of the baby gourds growing in here. Birdhouse gourds growing in here, and I'm kind of obsessed with the way they look on this particular trellis. And then I have some these other vines that are darker in here. These are some hyacinth bean vines that they're from years past, and they've just come through and put on a ton of growth. But I do need to spend some time in some different places getting some of my vines to start coming back this way. They're kind of getting up there into my neighbor's space. Now this right here looks like a plant, but it is actually just massive amounts of weeds. If I pull on this, all of this is just weeds that have grown up in this place, and they've grown up around a butterfly bush that has done so incredibly poorly with spider mites that it really does not need to return for next year. But yeah, look at all these vines everywhere. But yeah, buried in here is a butterfly bush that is just done very poorly. This whole section is not done great. This is an area I really want to work on for most potentially for next year. We are going to be pulling a lot of this out and putting in some new, what do I want to call it? Bearded iris. In here, which will be really fun. And once again, you can see the little loofahs and the little birdhouse gourds hanging on, which are just so incredibly cute and adorable. They've been super fun to grow this year. And truthfully, if I didn't have those going, I wouldn't have much of anything going back here. Because everything has been very neglected in this area. Just because, I mean, and Jeff will turn for y'all to show y'all behind. I've really been focusing on the garden on this side of the garden. I have not been focusing on the very back portion of the garden. And so there's a lot of growth in this section of the garden this year, as you all can see. And so, but not so much in this very back corner. But we're getting there, and I hope in the next few years that I'll get, more of that going. I do still have additional cantaloupe growing back here, cantaloupe vines growing back here. That should continue to produce over this and hopefully give me some blooms at the very end of the fall, or some fruit at the very end of the fall. Can you see the loofah up there on the fence? You see it up there? It's green. Looks like a cucumber. Yeah, you see it? All right, sweet. All right, you all, so that is the backyard. There's sections of it which are just glorious. There's section of it which is partially neglected, and there are sections of it that are incredibly neglected. Just kind of the way it is. I mean, I'm very proud of all of this that I did this year. It is amazing. I have more blooms than I ever have in the past at this time of the year, which is really fulfilling, because it's always really tough in August and even the first couple of weeks in September, because the heat is so brutal. It's hard to go outside. Like, I just don't want to, because it is just so brutally hot. So having some of these beckons me out here, which is really, really wonderful. And it's really nice to see how well things did at this time of the year, because it helps me plan better for next summer as well. So at this point in time, we are heading into planning for the fall, all the fall gardens. That's where we will start transitioning. You'll see me cutting back a whole lot and making room, and then we'll begin planting probably the second and third week in September. That's when we should be getting to the end of our significant triple digits. We'll still have some triple digits going into October, but they'll be way less starting the second and third week in September, which would be really great. But I hope you guys enjoyed today's tour of the backyard. As always, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Every time you like and comment, it helps grow the channel so much. And if you don't feel comfortable commenting, please just drop an emoji below, letting me know that you made it to the end and that you're saying hi. And be sure to check me out on my social media outlets, including Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. As always, she's a mad gardener or a decorator or anything else that she wants to be. Thanks, y'all.